Welcome to Fearless Females, where ambition meets resilience. Meet your guide, Lorie Jones, president of Fidelis Wealth Advisors. Join her and remarkable women executives as they uncover the triumphs and transformative moments shaping extraordinary careers. Ready to be fearless? Let the journey begin.
Good morning and welcome to Fearless Females. I'm so excited you all decided to join me today. I am so excited about this guest this morning. Her name is Brittany Hodak, and she is an author, and she talks about one of my favorite subjects, which is client experience. We have a book club here at Fidelis Wealth with our team, and if I don't get suggestions as to what book we should read, I usually choose a book, and probably 3 or 4 of the books we've read have all centered around that client experience and that customer experience. I just love the idea of wowing our clients and being a financial advisor that they can't stop raving about. So I loved Brittany's book. I love where she's coming from. And she is just such a happy, positive person. I can't wait for you to hear her interview. Let's get started. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining Fearless Females today. I am so excited about today's guest. We have Brittany Hodak. She's a keynote speaker and the author of Creating Superfans. And I told Brittany when I started chatting with her this morning, I love her book. You guys really, truly have to go read it. And if you listen to the audio version, she narrates it, and it's just a happy, light read that is so inspiring. So Brittany, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for those very kind words.
So I always ask this question, and I'm so interested in what your answer is. My very first question is, what is your favorite book?
This is such a hard question to answer because there are so many books that I love so much. But I think probably my favorite book of all time is The Catcher in the Rye.
Oh, really?
I think that was one of the first books. I don't read a lot of fiction books. And how old are you when you read Catcher in the Rye? Like 13, 14? I don't even know. That is one book that I have gone back to and read so many times, and it always holds up. And it's one of those books that I always discover something new or get a little bit of something different out of it. And now I rarely read fiction books. Like I will occasionally read a book if I'm at the beach, or if one of my girlfriends says like, oh, you've got to read this. This is, such an incredible book. Or if there's like a movie that comes out and I read the book because I love the movie, but I just don't read a lot of fiction. So I have probably 75 nonfiction books and business books that I love, love, love. But in terms of the book that I've read more than any other, it's got to be Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I go on where I read one genre and then I read another genre. And so I have those favorite books from all different ages of life. So I get what you're saying when you say it's a hard question, because it is for me too. I'm like, I've got 15 favorite books. What genre do you want?
Yeah, I was thinking about how many children's books I really love. I was recording a video the other day. It was like National Children's Book Day or something like that. And I was thinking about all the books that I loved when I was a child that I read to my kids now. And I even have a couple of books that were my parents' books when they were kids that I'm now reading to my children. And, it's kind of like when you watch a kid's movie as an adult and you go back and you're like, whoa, I had no idea any of that stuff was in there when I was 7 or 8 years old. And you just have, a different perspective. And I feel like children's books are very much that way too. And for me, one of the coolest things about being a parent is being able to go back and revisit some of those things with completely new eyes and understand them and appreciate them in a new light.
My kids are all older right now, but for Easter last year, I gave them each their favorite book from when they were a kid, so they're all graduated and hopefully pretty soon having kids of their own so I can have some grandkids, but they each got their Pinkalicious and King Bidgood's in the bathtub and Where the Wild Things Are. And I love those. You're right. I love those kids' books. They're so much fun. They just are such a fun place to be and a great time to remember. So tell me a little bit about your journey, Brittany. How did you get where you're at today? What are you doing? Talk to us about how you got where you are.
So I, like many people, took a very winding journey. I never thought I would be a keynote speaker. I don't even think I knew that was a job somebody could have until probably 8 or 9 years ago. And I never thought I would choose customer experience as this lane that I was passionate about. I always wanted to work in the music industry. That's all I ever wanted to do from the time I was a little girl. I didn't know if I was going to be in a band or manage a band or do publicity for a band, but I knew it was going to be something related to music. And I got my first job at a radio station when I was 16 years old. I interned at music magazines and record labels and anyone that would have me that was sort of music adjacent all through college. And then I moved to New York to work at a label as soon as I was out of school. And I just thought that was going to be my path. When I was 27, I launched my first company. It was a music marketing company, and we were incredibly fortunate that the first big client that I landed was Walmart. So overnight, I was able to get just about every record label to take my call because I had the backing of Walmart. And I started getting really fascinated in shopper marketing, which is basically like how are we making our products stand out in the stores so that somebody will want to buy ours and not somebody else's. I started to partner with all of these consumer packaged goods companies and learned that the problems that these consumer packaged goods companies were trying to solve were the exact same problems that I had been trying to help artists solve for several years, which is how do I break, right? Like, how do I go from obscurity to everybody knowing who I am? How do I go not just from people knowing who I am, but caring about me and choosing to spend their time and their money and their energy with me rather than, the other countless options that exist? So I started to really think about the experience because I think that's what it all boils down to. And I think my love of customer experience is something that I inherited from my dad. My dad was a restaurant manager when I was a kid. Then he worked at a car dealership, and getting to see the way he created these customer experiences that made people love being a part of his team, love shopping at the places that he was stewarding really had a bigger influence on me than I realized. And probably about 6 or 7 years ago, I started to get these requests seemingly out of nowhere. And then it just sort of snowballed and snowballed, people asking me to come speak about customer experience at their events, come address their boards, come share research that I was doing about the shopper experience or the customer experience. And it sort of morphed into this like full-time career of now I get to speak, I get to travel the world to talk about customer experience, to help people think about this idea of turning their customers into super fans, what that means, what that looks like, how you can do it, and how, as much as we like to think our industries are all so different from every other industry, they are
Mhm.
much more alike than they are different because we're all people and
Yeah.
we're all dealing with the same things that make us human.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. We're people. In the end, it doesn't matter what you're selling or what you're putting out there, what service you're trying to, we're all people. And so it probably would have a lot of similarities.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you went from, how did you get from like music industry to customer service? Like there must have been some steps in there. Did you work for Walmart the whole time? And then all of a sudden people are like just calling you saying, hey, come help.
So I started a company, and Walmart was our first big client.
Hmm.
And pretty soon we started doing things with other retailers. So for the entire 9 years that I ran the business before I sold it, Walmart was a client. But then we also worked with Amazon, we worked with Cracker Barrel, we worked with Target, we worked with all of these record labels. And the thing that I think other people realized before I did was I was always very bullish about the experience has to be amazing. Like, I'm not going to sign off on something, I'm not going to put my name on something, I'm not going to put something forward unless I know that it's going to be incredible. I don't
Hmm.
want to just be on par with other things in the marketplace. I want it to be several degrees of magnitude better.
Hmm.
And so I kind of got this reputation as being a stickler for what the experience was going to be and asking all these experiential questions. And to be honest, I'd not even heard the term customer experience
Uh-huh.
for like several years, right? Like, it wasn't until I think even when after I'd gone back to school and got a master's degree in marketing and customer behavior, people still weren't talking about customer experience. And so it wasn't something that was ever part of the plan. And people were initially starting, like hiring me to speak, I was speaking about marketing or I was speaking about sales. And then I realized that marketing and sales on their own in silos are not nearly as effective as when you're looking holistically at the entire customer journey, when you're looking holistically about the entire experience that your company provides. And that's when I sort of stumbled into this idea of customer experience. And I started saying, it's bigger than sales, it's bigger than marketing, it's bigger than customer service, it's all of these things together. And if you're not thinking about it holistically, then you're missing out because customers don't see silos. They
Mm-mm.
feel them, but they just look at somebody and say, "Oh, you should be able to help me because you're part of this company. You should be able to solve my problem because you're on this team." So I started to think, how can I train people to be more customer centric, not just in the way that they build their teams, but in the way they empower every individual on those teams to say, if a customer has a problem, it is your problem. Like, I don't
Yeah.
care what the problem is, but like you need to take ownership of it and you need to help get it solved. And so that's how I sort of accidentally found this field of customer experience.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And I wish that you could go teach some of these financial services companies how to do that too. That would be amazing if you could just help me out with that.
Well, I would love to. Anybody who wants a little bit of help, reach out. And it's funny. It's actually probably the biggest request that I have gotten over the past 2 years was people asking me if I would create a training course because they
Mhm.
wanted to give it to their employees either as part of onboarding or as part of their annual training, learning and development goals. And so I created this course called 6 Weeks to Superfans. That's exactly that. It's a training to help everyone understand that you are the acting chief of experience, no matter what your job title is, no matter what your role is. At any given moment, you can be called on to be the acting chief of experience for the company and sort of what that means and how to navigate the realities of that because we're all in the experience department together. And, all it takes is one bad experience that one person has and shares to very severely impact the reputation of a business.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Well, I'm passionate. I love your passion and I love the idea behind it as well because we're very people centric and we're very experience centric and I just really like the idea of talking to people rather than spreadsheets and numbers and data, right?
Yeah, every customer, especially in financial services where, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of
Mhm.
uncertainty, there's a lot of perhaps um, fear around what you don't know that you don't know. Like you have all of these big emotions and then you're focused on, your financial security, your family's financial security, these hugely important things. And I don't think there's ever been a person who woke up and said, if I could just feel like another number to my advisor, or if I could get just someone to like treat me like a cell in a spreadsheet, or just treat me like I don't matter, other than when they, take that commission once a quarter. I don't think anybody has ever said that. And so
Yeah.
it really is about showing your clients that every single one of them matters to you, that every client should feel like your favorite client, should be willing to go toe to toe to be like, there's no way that Lorie's taking as good a care of you as she's taking of me because Lorie loves me. She does everything for me. So it's really like a good way to think about customer experience in many industries, including financial services, is how many of your customers feel like your favorite?
Yeah. It's really funny you mentioned that. My sister-in-law one time sat down my 5 kids and asked them which one was my favorite. And to a person, I actually love this. To a person, each of the kids said they were my favorite. Well, one of them said Sammy was my favorite. She's the youngest, but they were the second favorite.
Which is amazing. That means you're doing a great job. When all of your kids feel like your favorite, even if they know maybe on like somewhat of an intellectual level as they get older that everybody is your favorite, they
Yeah,
still should feel like they are. And
they are.
that's, there's such a sweet parallel there for customer experience because it's the same thing. And honestly, for employee experience, right? You want every employee to feel like that they are appreciated the most, that
Yeah.
they have a great relationship with you.
Yeah. Love it. I love it. You're speaking my language. So, Brittany, what is the best investment that you've made in yourself? If you can look back over your journey, can you say, oh, I am so glad I did this thing because it's made a huge difference in my life.
There have been several times where I invested more money than I thought I had at the time for some sort of personal or professional development. And looking back, almost all of them were good decisions. There were some where I was like, well, that was kind of a waste of money. But, it's usually like because I hired the wrong person or I hired maybe the right person, but at the wrong time. So I think all of the investments that I've made for me to learn more, to develop who I am, have been particularly valuable. One of my favorite groups that I've been a part of for more than 5 years now, maybe coming up on 6 years, and it has been just an amazing investment, is something called Brand Builders Group. And Brand Builders Group is a community of people that was founded by two people who are now dear friends of mine, Rory and AJ Vaden. They say they help mission-driven messengers. They help people sort of dial into what they were uniquely created to do to help them spread their messages in the world to benefit others. And that has been just a wonderful community that has helped me on my journey of speaking and writing and thinking through what my unique lens is on these things like customer experience that I care so deeply about.
I love that idea. It's kind of the idea of one of the women that I interviewed said, find your tribe. It's like you're finding those resources that speak to you because they align with your values and who you are and what you do.
Absolutely.
Is there any specific programs like public speaking or like, is there anything specific that you invested in that you're like, oh, I would do that again 100 million times?
Yeah, I think with Brand Builders Group, they have several different courses that are all sort of part of the membership. When I joined, it was for public speaking, but I gained so much more knowledge and information from working with them over the several years because they have programs around writing books and creating podcasts and launching courses and all of the other things that are sort of part of that like creator economy and that sort of idea of monetizing your personal brand and your expertise. So if anybody wants to check it out, Brand Builders Group.
And
but
staying true, it sounds like they stay true to like who you are. They're not trying to make you into, fit a mold, whatever that mold is, but they're helping you to become more authentic, more truly who you are.
Yeah. And it's really like, I feel like that's every kind of great coach, right? Is not, I'm going to tell you what you need to do to be more like somebody else. It's, I'm going to recognize the potential that you have and give you the tools that you need to emphasize those gifts or compensate for those weaknesses to become a better version of who you have the potential to be.
Yeah, I love that. I work that hard with my team. We each have strength. And if you focus on those strengths and things that you do well and kind of build them up, you turn into an amazing person. So, what is the worst advice you've gotten on your journey? And did you take it or did you not take it?
Wow, what a great question. I have taken lots of bad advice over the years. I wish I could say that I hadn't. And, I feel like a lot of times the reason I took bad advice is because I allowed myself to believe that someone else's opinion was more entitled to the decision than my own intuition, right? Like I thought, well, they're older than me, or they have more money than I do, or they're smarter than I am, or they've done this before. So I'm going to ignore like all of the red flashing lights inside and what feels so wrong in my gut and go with what they're telling me to do because they know better. And I think for a lot of people, and maybe especially women, obviously I can only speak to my own experience, but I feel like in some ways we're kind of like conditioned for that, right? Of like, don't trust your gut, trust what these like wiser people are saying to you. And so I don't know if there's like one particular instance that I would highlight, but a lot of times I think I knew deep down what was the next best step for me and I ignored it because there was like outside static coming from somebody who I either looked up to or trusted or wanted to be more like and most of it was offered in a very benevolent way, but it was me not being focused on like my path, me being focused on like, well, this worked for them, so I should try to do exactly what they did, or I'm going to follow what they're saying to do, even if I know that, the world in which they did that is not the same world today because they're 25 years older or because they have a whole different set of circumstances. So I think that was probably most of the bad advice I took was from well-intentioned people who were trying to tell me what worked for them that just didn't quite feel authentic for me or my journey.
And it's really hard when you're younger and just starting out to have that because you do trust these people that you look up to and they are successful in what they're doing. And sometimes it is so hard to have that trust in yourself when you're just young and you don't know what you're doing half the time. How did you change that? Was it just time? You just got older and started trusting yourself a little bit more, or?
I think a lot of it is that, yeah, a lot of it is just the maturity that comes with getting older, and also the retrospect, right? To be able to say like, well, I did this thing for 8 months. I worked so hard. I did all of these things. I tried to make it work. And am I better off than I was before I did this? Or am I better off than I would have been if I had zigged instead of zagged? So I think one important thing is just not being afraid to like audit the decisions that you make after you make them. And even if you can't change them, can you say like, what led me to make this, in hindsight, bad decision that I can like be on the lookout for so I don't make a similar bad decision for the same wrong reason in the future.
I love that idea. And I'm trying to put that into my own life and kind of do a quarterly look back. Like, am I still going in the direction I want to go? And how did I do? Looking back, is there something I could have done differently or I would have changed so that I don't keep making the same mistakes over and over again, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny. I think I fell into this pattern for a while where I was really fortunate that I was good at a lot of things. And so a lot of people were coming to me asking me to do things. And I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. Yeah, that's great. Like, oh, that sounds exciting. And so I was, what's the saying? Like, jack of all trades, master of none. And it wasn't until I put my head down and said, like, I want to be the best in the world at something. I want to pick one thing and go be the absolute best at that. I want to be the person that when I go up on stage and speak about customer experience, I change the way people think. I change the way they act, and they think that is one of the best keynote speakers I've ever seen. Like, that is what I want. And for years, so many people were upset when I would say no to other things. People that wanted to hire me to host something for them or hire me to be a part of their team or do this or that or that. And many of them kind of like talked down on this idea of like, oh, I can't believe you're telling me no because you want to be a keynote speaker. Like, what? And it was like, I don't care if you respect this dream, this choice, this path. Like, this is what I'm doing. And I know it sucks for you that you don't get access to me, that's what you wanted. But like, this isn't about me making your dream better. This is about me making my dream better. And I think some of that is age. Some of that is, lived experience. But it was like a switch one day that I was like, why am I saying no to what I want to do? Because all of these other people would benefit from me helping them with their thing. Like, I don't exist on this earth to help other people become the best version of themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that idea. The Essentialism is a book that I'm reading right now. And it talks a lot about kind of deciding what is essential and what is non-essential in your vision, in your path, in your life. And I think that's what you're talking about is kind of, you can't do everything for everyone. And a lot of times as women, we try.
We do. And we feel bad about saying no, right? Like, I think as women, we are much more likely to feel guilt for saying no to something or to say yes for something to save us feeling guilty than men.
Yeah, I agree. What about looking back? Is there a situation that you would say, oh my goodness, if I knew then what I know now, that would have gone completely differently. I would have done something completely different in that situation.
Yeah, I think there are. One in particular. So I'd been running my business for several years, and I got a call one day from a casting producer who invited me to be on Shark Tank. And I was like, well, that'll be fun. I love Shark Tank. That sounds like a cool thing to do. And so I went on Shark Tank and everything went well. I got offers from 4 of the 5 sharks, did a deal on the show that didn't end up coming to fruition in real life. But I had an idea while I was there, because every day we were in LA for like 4 or 5 days, because they don't tell you exactly when you're going to film. They fly a bunch of people out and they kind of, run the production schedule day by day. And so every day I was getting paid a per diem, and it was like $75 or $76 a day, way more than I was actually spending on food, especially since I was trying to like look really skinny because we were going to be filming this thing for Shark Tank in a few days. And I walked out about the hotel one day to the mall across the street, and there was a homeless gentleman, and I opened my per diem envelope and gave him $20. And I remember thinking, wow, how many people a day could I feed with this per diem? Like $76 or whatever it was would feed so many more people than one.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking about all of the people who got per diems as part of their lives, business people, professional athletes, so many people from so many different walks of life. And I thought, what if there was a way for people to pledge their per diems to help people that were struggling with hunger? So my cousin and I actually incorporated a charity, started this 501c3 called Per Diems Against Poverty, with the ambitious goal of reallocating per diems from professionals and professional athletes into the markets where they lived, where people were struggling with hunger. And, I did not realize how much I did not know about the multiple layers of the issues of food insecurity and what it looks like and what it means. And we launched this charity. We partnered with Feeding America. We had several professional athletes and several corporate partners who all signed on. And initially, it was like, oh, this is really great. And then after a couple of years, it became clear, like, you don't just sort of run a charity on the side. You don't just sort of say like, oh, we can probably figure this out. And so I think in hindsight, rather than saying, I'm going to tackle this problem by starting a charity and spending, tens of thousands of dollars of my own money to get it off the ground, and then donating thousands of hours of labor to try to make it work, it probably would have been better for me to advocate for, food insecurity relief in other ways. So I don't regret doing it. I learned a lot, but definitely in hindsight, I'm like, what was I thinking? Especially because I was like already running a business full time, already, doing the 9 different things that I was sort of doing on the side. But, we didn't know any of that in our 20s, right? Where we're like young and dumb and we're like, I can do this.
I can do everything, really, if you think about it, right? Superwoman.
Like how much harder could it be to run 2 companies than 1 company? It's not that hard. Elon Musk does it, right?
I think that's really wise. And looking back at our discussion about like finding what you're best at and kind of focusing and putting your time and energy and being able to say no to things that don't meet that goal. I think that's probably a hard way to learn that lesson, but probably the lesson that was learned, right?
Exactly.
Brittany, what is the one thing that you would tell yourself if you could go back and talk to yourself at the beginning of your journey at about 20 years old? What is the one thing you would tell that young, ambitious, bright-eyed, eager young woman?
Can I cheat and say 2 things?
Sure.
One, I would say always trust your instincts. Number 2, I would say, but that does not mean chase every idea. And when you have a new idea to pursue, give it like a day before you decide that you're going to go after it 1,000 miles an hour. Trust yourself that there's validity there, but remember that you can do anything you want, but you can't do everything you want.
I love that idea. Like I've had like 20 million different ideas. And if I had given it 24 hours, I may not have jumped the gun on some of those. Some of those stick around. And if it's a good idea, it does stick around, right?
Yeah. Well, it's so funny. I heard, so there's, do you know Jon Acuff? He's a speaker author. Okay. You would probably really like his stuff. He's written a lot of books that I really like, including one called Soundtracks. And he has a podcast called All It Takes Is a Goal. And it's a great podcast for anybody who is like performance minded, performance focused. And I love to listen to it like when I walk around my neighborhood. And I was listening to an episode recently, and he said that he has his assistant, like there's a rule now where when he tells his assistant an idea, she doesn't start working working on it for a week. And a week later at their next meeting, she'll say like, okay, Jon, do you still want me to do this thing? And that like half the time he's like, what are you talking about? But he doesn't even remember telling her about that thing because it was something that was like this brilliant like flash of an idea that he got that he then like completely forgot about. And I was laughing because I was like, oh my gosh, that is my life. That is exactly how I am. But it's me chasing those things. And then a week later being like, I spent a week of my life on what? Like, why did I think this was a good idea? So yeah, I think if I could go back and tell 20-year-old me to like put them in a lockbox for a period of time, like set the timer and not like I'm letting this idea incubate, but like I'm legit forgetting about this and I'm going to revisit it and see if it seems brilliant or stupid with the benefit of like a full night's sleep, because it's a real fine line, right? Between those two, brilliance and stupidity.
Yeah. And some of the ideas that I've come up with, I'm like, oh, this is the best idea ever. And I am going to follow this until I get this right. And other ideas, I'm like, what was I thinking?
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea of kind of maybe put a list together of the different ideas that you have and then let them sit on ice for just 24 hours. Just let them set and think about it. I love that. That's good advice for me. And I'm not 20.
Yeah, it's good advice for me to follow. I'm trying to get better at it, but it's funny. Alex, who works with me on my team, will sometimes be like, and are we going to still do that thing? And I'm like, yeah, no, we're not going to do that thing anymore. Like that sounded really good for like a hot second back around April, but no, we're not doing that.
Yeah. What scared you the most when you started out? Was there something, and does it still scare you, or did you find a way to work through it?
So I had never thought about being an entrepreneur. It wasn't until in a conversation with a friend who worked at Walmart, who I'd been trying to pitch this idea to, said, why don't you just start your own company and I'll give you a vendor number? And I Googled how to start a business. And, I didn't have any idea what I didn't know. And I think at the time, 26, 27 years old, the thing that scared me the most was how hard it would be to get another job if I failed. But then I sort of looked at it and was like, well, I don't have a mortgage. Like I was living in New York City, so I just had an apartment. I was like, I don't have any kids. I don't really have any real responsibilities. So if ever I'm going to take a chance and try this, it's now. And if I fail, then I'll start interviewing for jobs and I'll put CEO on my resume. And how bad is that going to look? Lots of startups fail, right? And so I had all these ideas of like, what would I do if it didn't work? But I never took the time to think like, what if it works? And it worked really well. Within a year, I had earned over $1 million. I had sold almost $10 million of product in Walmart stores worldwide. And I didn't know what an outlier I was at the time. I didn't realize that fewer than 2% of women-owned businesses ever break the $1 million revenue mark in a year. And most of those do not do it in their first year. So I don't really think I had a lot of fear, but I think part of that is because I was blissfully ignorant in a lot of ways. Like I think one fear that I still have is like people are going to say mean things, like people aren't going to like me, people are going to whatever. And like, if, by the way, that is a fear that you have, like, do not go on a reality TV show. The internet will take all of your worst fears and prove them to be very valid. And I still there are people who will write mean things about my books, say mean things after I speak. And I've sort of realized that those are people dealing with them problems. Like that's not a me problem, that's a them problem. And I just happen to like be in their orbit. So I don't know. I would say I didn't initially have a lot of fear other than what felt like a very reasonable fear of like, if I fail, I'll just like go back to doing what I was doing before. And I try now not to fall victim to the fear of like, are people going to say mean things or think mean things or not like me? Because I think that's probably something that a lot of people struggle with thinking.
Yeah. Do you read because I know social media sometimes is not kind. Do you read the mean things that they say and you've just learned to like kind of block it out? That's not me.
It's funny, like something that happened early on in my speaking journey, I spoke at this event and I was definitely the lowest paid speaker there. It was somebody who was like, I don't have a lot of money left, but I'm going to give you a chance. And so there were people there that were making at least 10 times what I made. And after the event organizer shared with me that I had the highest reviews of any speaker. And he was like, not even like pretending that he was not surprised by it, right? He was like, I cannot believe this, and he shared the feedback with me. And there had been hundreds of people at this event. And my overall score was like 4.98 out of 5. And probably 200 or 300 people had left a comment. A lot of people just did reviews, but like a couple hundred people had comments. And most of them were very like, oh, this was really entertaining, or I really enjoyed it, or I learned a lot, or whatever. But there were two that were so mean. There was one person that was like, you're so annoying and I hate your voice and I never want to see you speak again, and had given me a 1 star. And I was like, well, that's a really mean person. And then somebody else, and this was one that like I still laugh about, gave me 1 star, or maybe it was 2 stars. It was 1 or 2 stars. And he said, I don't like female speakers. And I just thought the absurdity of it. I was like, it is, at the time it was like 2018 or 2019. I was like, you wrote on a form with your name on it in the year 2018 or 2019 that you don't like female speakers. Like, wow. And then that sort of put the other one. Of course it did. I was like, I wish that guy didn't think I was annoying and had a voice that he hated. But like, this is not a me thing. This is those two. I was like, I bet those two people like work at the same company and sat at the same table and they're like miserable together. But yeah, I read a lot of the mean things, but they don't get under my skin as much. I think also now because, and as a mom, it's like when you have, I don't want to say real responsibilities, because obviously people have real responsibilities who do not have children. But like when you have children, and especially young children, it's just like a different level of something that needs your attention, not just immediately, but like incessantly. And I feel like there's just not as like much space in my brain for those things that used to bug me before I had kids. Cause now it's like, well, I got to worry about like what is all over my kid's hand right now that's going to, instantly makes you forget everything else when you're like, oh my gosh, what is this situation that needs my immediate attention?
Yeah. When you're responsible for keeping another person alive to get to adulthood, it does put other things in perspective. And you're like, well, I guess they were mean. Oh, well, we'll go on.
Yeah. And that person that's constantly trying to sabotage it, you feel like you are not on the same team with me of trying to keep you alive. You're trying to find 87 creative new ways to accidentally kill yourself today before you go to bed. Like we need to be a team. Let's stay focused on like you not breaking your neck, killing yourself, jumping in front of traffic. Like,
oh, I love that, Brittany. That's going to make me laugh for a long, long time. I love that. That is, I never even thought of it that way, but they are actively fighting against you, trying to keep them alive.
100% actively. It's so funny. I'm like getting over being a little bit sick right now. And I was telling somebody earlier today, I was like, my voice sounds a little nasally and I'm still like really stuffed up and congested. And I keep trying to explain to my children that there's a direct correlation between like why we are all sick all the time and the fact that they pick their noses. And I'm like, I will pay you so much money. Like if you just stop eating your boogers, your like disgusting, grubby, germ-filled hands, you like lick your fingers, then go touch the grossest things, and then you stick those fingers up your nose. Like it's no wonder we're all sick all the time. Yeah, kids are just like designed to like test your immune system, your patience, all the things.
I love it. There is hope on the other side, though. They turn into wonderful adults some days. Mine are still baby adult stage, but one of these days they're going to be fully grown and have kids of their own. And then you can wish all that nose picking on your grandkids.
I was going to say, so the time will come when my children will stop thinking that boogers are a meal. Like that
yeah,
is.
Yeah. What about unique challenges because you were a woman? Did you face any of those?
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, I think very early on, I realized that there were always going to be people who would discount me and underestimate me because I was a woman, and that rather than let that bother me, I was going to use it as a strength. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget, I was in a meeting with Walmart, and there was a huge brand. I won't say who the brand was, but one of their senior executives said, I'm sorry, I have a question. I don't think we've covered yet. Like, who is your dad? And I was like, huh? What? Why are you asking about my dad? And he was like, I just want to know who your father is. And I was like, oh, thank you. Like, because you think he did a good job raising me. Like, his name is Jody and he lives in Arkansas. And he was like, no, I want to know who your father is that helped you start this company, because everything that you're saying is unbelievable. There's no way you would have had this amount of success without somebody. And I was so offended. And I probably didn't handle it as maturely as I should have in that moment, in that meeting. Although thankfully I had a couple other females in there who like had my back, and they were like, yeah, he's an asshole. Don't worry about him. Hope I can say that on your podcast. But that and several other instances, I was like, you know what? If they're going to underestimate me, that's on them, not me. But if they're going to underestimate me anyway, I better make it hit 10 times harder when they finally realize like how wrong they are.
Mm-hmm.
And so that always fueled me to be not just like a little bit better than the people discounting me, but like 10 times better than the people. I was like, how can I make this like hurt so bad that they don't forget about it for a while and hopefully never underestimate another female again because she's female.
Yeah, I love that. So it just added fuel to your fire so that you were able to become more.
100%. And also, again, having that presence of mind of like, it's not up to me to change their mind. Like, I'm not ever going to make them stop being, ageist, stop being misogynistic. Like I can make it hurt when they realize how wrong they were, but I'm not trying to do it to make them a better person. It is up to them to make themselves a better person. And clearly, if they're 65 years old and haven't yet, they're probably like not worried about it. So I'm not going to worry about it either.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. The idea of kind of, this is their problem, their road, their thing to deal with. And my focus is on who I want to become and who I want to be, like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Like that guy who said he doesn't like female speakers. Fine. That doesn't impact me. You know what I mean? It's not my life's mission to like change his mind so that he doesn't miss out on amazing female speakers in the future. Like that guy can keep doing that guy.
Yeah. You can do him. I'm going to be an amazing female speaker. He's going to miss out. Yeah. I like that. What is the thing, Brittany, that you are most proud of?
I mean, I hope it's not like too early to say this because if I'm being honest, like the jury could still be out a little bit, but I'm going to say at this point in time, my 2 kiddos, I feel like my boys are pretty fantastic, even though they eat their own boogers, even though they actively try to find new ways to kill themselves. They're pretty awesome little kids. And, as a parent, when you like hear the way they talk to each other and they want to like share with each other, they want to help each other, they're doing the things when they don't know you're watching and you're like, okay, I'm doing a good job. They're absorbing the things that matter. Actually, in the back of my book, it's one of the last pages. I tell a story of when my older son, Cato, who's now almost 7, was about to turn 3. I was working on my book one day and I was like, buddy, remember, like, you're supposed to be upstairs with daddy because mommy's working on her book. He asked me what my book was about. And it was the first time he had ever asked or shown any interest. And, I said, well, and I'm trying to figure out how do I explain customer experience in a way that a 2.5-year-old is going to understand. And so I started kind of telling him, and I could tell his eyes were, sort of glazing over after 20 seconds or so. And I said, well, what do you think, buddy? And I totally expected he was going to say like, that sounds dumb. You should write a book about monster trucks or, something like that. But he looked at me and he said, I think you should tell all the people to be nice and listen. And then he just ran out of the room. And I was like, what a mic drop from a 2-year-old. So that's actually the last page of my book. It's got like that story. And It's got the quote from Brittany Hodak that says, be nice and listen.
Yeah.
And it's great advice. It's solid advice, whether you're in preschool or beyond. It's pretty good advice.
I agree. 100%. Top to bottom, age 1 to age 100. Be nice and listen, right? Any advice, Brittany, for a young lady who is just starting down the path that you are so successful at? Anything that you would tell her?
Something that was so hard for me, and I say this understanding that it's like almost hypocritical for me to say it because I so did not embody this, but going back to the like advice, try to be patient. As hard as it is, like be patient because like I have people all the time that are like, I want to do what you do. I want to be on stages and get people to listen. And they're like 23. And I'm like, the reason people are listening to me now at 40 years old is because I lived this for 15 years. I did this. I proved myself. I gained the reputation of somebody who wasn't just talking about how to do it, but told how I did it. And as much as you maybe know that this is part of your journey, like I didn't know you could be a speaker, but like just go focus on being the absolute best in the world at something. Because once you're the absolute best in the world at something, then you earn the right to get to talk to other people about that thing. So as hard as it is to be patient because you see somebody who's 35 or 45 or 55 or 65 and you want to be where they're at, just try to be the best that you can be at every single age and do the things to where it might take you 10 years to get where you want to go, but like you're doing the right things to get there in 10 years, not feeling jealous or resentful or bitter that like you don't have it right now and trying to figure out what's like the quick fix to get that thing. Because I know, Lorie, it's not like one day you wake up and you're like, I've arrived. Like there's always something Like, as much as you think like, when I get to that point, I'm not going to want anything else. Like, yes, you will. You absolutely will. So just keep trying to like do the work, put your head down, put one foot after the other, do the right thing. And like, you will get to all of those places. Maybe not tomorrow, but like you will.
Yeah. Keep trying. Keep going, keep walking, keep working. Yeah, I love that idea. And yeah, you're right. It never feels, it doesn't matter how old you are. I hope that I never feel like I have arrived. I hope that I always am working towards some new crazy idea that I've put in my 24-hour vault. And, and pulled it
I'll
out.
never forget. I launched my company and it was really successful, but I just didn't love it. Like I was sort of not as inspired as I had been when I started it. And I was having lunch with a dear friend of mine who's like 15 years older than me. And she said, "Why is it so hard for you to leave this?" And I was like, this is all I've spent so many years of my life building this. Like this is, I had my identity wrapped up in this company, all of my accolades and success. And she said, "Do you really think that when you are in your 70s, you're going to look back and say, wow, all of my best professional moments happened before I turned 35? And I was like, I hope not. And she said, "Well, then stop holding on so hard to this thing because you're like, everything I've built has led to this. Like you're 33, you're 30 or 34, whatever it was at the time." She was like, "You have your entire career, but it doesn't feel like that when you're in the moment, right? In the moment, you feel like this is everything I've ever done."
Yeah.
And so having the gift of her perspective to say like, "Do you really think you're going to look back and say like it was all downhill after my 35th birthday," was helpful for me in that moment. And I've tried to like keep that perspective as I've let go of things since to like get me to where, there's my friend AJ Vaden had this like beautiful quote the other day. She said, your new life is always going to cost you your old life. That next thing that you do is always going to cost you the comfort of the thing you've been doing.
Mm-hmm. But just a little bit fearless, and you can try it. And I've never had, and this is a theme that's come up over and over again as I've done these interviews, I've never had someone say, "I regret doing something." They always tell me, "Oh, I regret not doing something." So, Brittany, thank you so much for spending this time with us. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for doing it and for helping my listeners. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Lorie, for having me. And thank you for giving your listeners a path. We were talking about before we started recording how we both wish we had something like this when we were younger. We're at crossroads where, we couldn't just listen to a podcast or turn on YouTube when we were younger. So thank you for doing this for all of the fearless females out there who hopefully will glean something from our conversation.
Yeah, hopefully. And I think they could take a lot of nuggets out of this one. I learned something from every conversation. So if I have a listener that wants to get in touch with you and ask questions, where do they go?
You can go to BrittanyHodak.com. That's the home of all my things on the internet. And from there, you'll find tons of freebies. You'll find my email. You'll find all of my socials. Everything you could want to know and more, including links to get creating superfans, are at BrittanyHodak.com.
Well, I suggest they do. I loved the book, and I would do the audiobook because I loved it. I thought it was really great. So thank you, Brittany. I appreciate it.
Thank you for saying that. And thanks again for having me.